Have you ever wondered why lasting change feels elusive despite bursts of initial progress? Perhaps you've tasted moments of breakthrough, those thrilling periods when everything seems aligned, only to slip back into familiar frustrations, habits, and routines. If this pattern resonates, you're not alone, and you're certainly not lacking motivation. Instead, you're experiencing what science calls identity homeostasis, an internal thermostat hardwired to maintain the status quo, sabotaging your efforts to sustain growth. Your brain is resisting not because it's flawed, but because your very identity, who you believe yourself to be, is programmed to restore familiar patterns, even when those patterns no longer serve you. But imagine for a moment, what if you could permanently recalibrate this thermostat? What if, instead of battling willpower and motivation, you could effortlessly embody the type of person who naturally achieves consistent success? In Identity Shift, How to Break Free from the Old You, you'll embark on a strategic, evidence-based journey to rewrite your internal narrative. You'll discover why traditional approaches, rooted solely in willpower and tactics, inevitably fail, and what successful individuals do differently by upgrading their internal identity first. Drawing upon proven psychological principles and practical experiments, this book equips you with a clear, actionable blueprint to reset your internal set point, dismantle limiting beliefs, and establish identity-based habits that align seamlessly with the outcomes you desire. Your future self is closer than you realize. The question isn't whether change is possible, but whether you're ready to finally break free from the cycle of temporary victories and setbacks. If you're ready to step fully into a new identity, one that generates lasting results, then this book is your guide. Welcome to your Identity Shift. Chapter 1. Break the Mold. Your heart pounds at 3 a.m. as every missed opportunity replays in your mind like a broken record. You've worked harder this year than ever before, yet you're stuck in the same reactive cycles. Revenue spikes, then stalls. You promise yourself you'll delegate more, then find yourself micromanaging again. You plan strategic time blocks, then watch them crumble under urgent requests that could have waited. Sound familiar? You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're fighting an invisible enemy that's been sabotaging your progress from day one, an outdated identity operating system that keeps dragging you back to baseline. This chapter will expose the real bottleneck choking your growth and show you exactly how to break free. You'll discover why willpower always fails, why your best intentions backfire, and how to install a new identity framework that makes success feel inevitable instead of exhausting. The invisible thermostat running your life. Here's what most ambitious builders never realize. Your brain has an internal thermostat. Just like the device on your wall maintains room temperature, your identity maintains behavioral temperature. When you try to act bigger than your self-image allows, the system kicks in to cool you down. When you slip below your baseline, it heats things up to restore familiar patterns. This is identity homeostasis, the force that explains why 70% of lottery winners go broke, why promoted managers often fail, and why your breakthrough months are followed by mysterious slumps. Your brain isn't trying to hurt you, it's trying to protect the you it knows. The hidden rules governing your days sound innocent enough. I must do it all myself. I'm not a natural leader. Good work requires struggle. But these invisible beliefs create visible ceilings. They cap your revenue at levels that feel realistic. They limit your team size to what feels manageable. They keep your calendar packed because rest feels irresponsible. Map where this set point blocks you. Notice how you self-sabotage wins that don't match your self-image. Watch how you explain away compliments that contradict your story. See how you choose the harder path when the easier one threatens your identity as someone who earns everything. The cost compounds daily. Missed partnerships because you don't deserve that level of collaboration. Delayed launches because the product isn't perfect enough for someone like you. Revenue plateaus because scaling feels too good to be true. Every identity rule you don't examine becomes a business rule you can't break. The willpower trap that's burning you out. Most people try to override their identity with raw determination. They set bigger goals, work longer hours, and push through resistance. This is like trying to heat a house by standing next to the thermostat with a hairdryer. You might see temporary spikes, but the system will always win. Willpower fights your operating system and burns out fast. You can white-knuckle your way through a few weeks of new behavior, but stress reveals your true programming. The moment pressure hits, you default to familiar patterns. The moment you're tired, you revert to old rules. The moment you're uncertain, you choose the path that feels like you. Spot the symptoms: relapse after wins, shame loops that follow success, overwork that masquerades as progress. You hit a revenue goal, then mysteriously lose focus. You delegate a project, then take it back because it's easier to do it myself. You block time for strategy, then fill it with busy work because planning feels unproductive. The opportunity cost is staggering. Every month you spend fighting your identity is a month you could spend building leverage. Every week you waste on internal negotiations is a week your competitors gain ground. Every day you choose familiar struggle over unfamiliar ease is a day you train your brain that growth equals pain. Winners understand something losers miss. Resistance isn't a character flaw. It's feedback from a misconfigured operating system. Instead of pushing harder against the friction, they pause to ask, what belief is creating this resistance? What rule needs updating? What story needs rewriting? The identity operating system revolution. The solution isn't more motivation. It's a complete OS upgrade. Think of your identity as software running in the background of your life. It takes inputs, experiences, processes them through filters, beliefs, and outputs behaviors, results. Change the software, change the output. The identity operating system works like this. Beliefs create rules, rules create routines, routines create results. Most people try to change results directly. Winners change beliefs first, knowing everything downstream will shift naturally. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is strategic identity architecture. You're not lying to yourself about who you are. You're designing who you're becoming and installing the infrastructure to support that person. The 8-step arc you'll master in this book follows a precise sequence. First, you'll recalibrate your baseline with a set point reset. Then you'll install a targeting system through aim and error. You'll update your beliefs through belief math and rewrite limiting stories through story rewrite. You'll transfer certainty through certainty codes and build identity-based habits through act as. Finally, you'll architect your environment through OS upgrade and integrate everything through own the shift. Why this order? Because baseline comes before behavior. If your thermostat is set to 65 degrees, cranking the heat to 80 will only trigger the cooling system. Reset the thermostat first, then the room naturally adjusts. Targets guide errors, and errors guide adjustments. Without a clear identity target, you can't tell if you're on track or off course. With precision targets, every miss becomes useful data for the next iteration. Evidence builds certainty, and certainty enables action. Stack enough proof of your new identity, and bold moves start feeling reasonable instead of reckless. Action creates automation when it's designed correctly. Repeat the right behaviors enough times, and they become your new default. Your first pass game plan. By the time you finish this book, you'll have a minimal viable identity that changes everything. This isn't a complete personality overhaul. It's one clear sentence that captures who you're becoming. I am a calm, strategic builder. I am a decisive, systems-focused leader. I am a patient, process-driven creator. Choose one keystone quality to embody this month. Not 3, not 5, 1. If you pick strategic, every decision gets filtered through that lens. If you choose calm, every reaction gets measured against that standard. If you select decisive, every delay becomes visible friction to eliminate. Set 3 rules your new baseline obeys. These aren't aspirational guidelines. They're non-negotiable operating principles. I plan before I act. I delegate before I do. I pause before I react. Simple, clear, measurable. Launch a 7-day identity experiment immediately. Pick one daily micro-act that proves your new identity. Something so small you can't fail, so obvious you can't miss. 2 minutes of morning planning for the strategic builder. 1 deep breath before responding for the calm leader. 30 seconds of decision-making for the decisive creator. Log 3 pieces of evidence per day. Not achievements, not outcomes. Evidence. I chose the strategic option when the urgent one was easier. I stayed calm when the client changed requirements. I decided quickly when my old self would have researched for hours. Install visible anchors in your environment. Change your phone lock screen to display your keystone quality. Put a card on your desk with your 3 rules. Set a calendar reminder with your identity statement. These aren't motivational tricks. They're environmental cues that make the new behavior easier than the old. Add protective friction to one old pattern. Move the app that wastes your time off your home screen. Put your phone in another room during focus blocks. Require a written justification before saying yes to requests that don't align with your identity. Share one public commitment to add positive pressure. Tell one person your identity experiment. Ask them to mirror your language back to you. Report your evidence weekly. Reputational gravity pulls you forward when motivation fades. The winner's choice. This is where paths diverge. Winners take responsibility for their operating system. They understand that identity is a choice, not a sentence. They treat misses as data, not drama. They know that small promises kept beat big plans ignored. Losers wait for motivation to strike. They treat identity as fixed destiny instead of flexible design. They confuse activity with progress, motion with momentum. They blame circumstances instead of examining systems. The choice is yours. You can spend another year fighting your identity, pushing against invisible resistance, wondering why success feels so hard. Or you can spend the next 8 chapters installing a new operating system that makes your best behavior feel natural. Your future self is watching this moment. They're waiting to see if you'll choose the familiar struggle or the unfamiliar ease. They're hoping you'll finally understand that the person you're becoming is more important than the person you've been. The door to transformation is open, but walking through it requires something most people never do, treating identity as a skill to develop, not a story to endure. The next chapter will show you exactly how to reset your internal thermostat and recalibrate your baseline for good. The old you got you this far. The new you will take you the rest of the way. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Set Point. A rubber band stretches when you pull it. Release the tension, and it snaps back to its original shape. Pull harder, hold longer, doesn't matter. The moment you let go, it returns to form. The rubber band's molecular structure wins. Your identity works the same way. You decide to be more strategic, delegate more, or take bigger risks. For a few days, maybe weeks, you act differently. Then stress hits, pressure mounts. Without warning, you're back to your old patterns. Micromanaging, firefighting, playing small. The identity thermostat has restored your familiar baseline. This chapter reveals the hidden mechanism that's been sabotaging your progress and shows you how to reset it permanently. You'll discover why your best intentions keep failing and learn to recalibrate your internal set point so new behavior becomes the path of least resistance. The invisible governor on your growth. Most ambitious builders never realize they're operating under an invisible speed limit. It's not imposed by markets, competitors, or circumstances. It's self-imposed by a set point that determines what feels normal for someone like you. This set point runs deeper than conscious goals or surface-level motivation. It's the collection of I am beliefs that govern your daily micro-choices. I am someone who works hard for everything. I am not naturally good with people. I am the type who needs to check every detail. These statements sound innocent, but they create invisible boundaries around what you'll attempt, how you'll respond to opportunities, and what you'll accept as realistic. The set point dictates how bold you'll act under stress. When pressure mounts and uncertainty rises, you don't default to your aspirations, you default to your identity. If your set point says, "I'm not a natural leader," you'll avoid the leadership moment. If it whispers, "I don't deserve this level of success," you'll unconsciously sabotage the breakthrough. Without a reset, you'll cool down any breakthrough. Hit a revenue milestone, the set point triggers thoughts about sustainability and whether you can maintain this level. Land a dream client. It questions whether you're qualified to serve at this tier. Build a high-performing team. It wonders when the other shoe will drop. A small calibration shifts hundreds of daily micro-choices. Change your set point from "I'm always behind" to "I work at a sustainable pace," and watch how differently you respond to requests, deadlines, and opportunities. Shift from "I have to do it myself" to "I build systems and delegate," and notice how your calendar transforms. The energy cost of fighting your set point is enormous. Every decision becomes a negotiation. Every new behavior requires willpower. Every bold move feels like swimming upstream. Reset the set point, and the current flows in your favor. The mythology of motivation. The first myth that keeps people trapped is the belief that more motivation will fix everything. They think if they just get inspired enough, pumped up enough, or scared enough, they'll finally change. But motivation spikes, then fades. Set points persist. Motivation is like caffeine for behavior, a temporary boost that wears off and leaves you more tired than before. You can motivate yourself to work 18-hour days for a week, but your set point will eventually restore balance by forcing rest, distraction, or burnout. You can psych yourself up to make bold moves for a month, but the set point will gradually guide you back to familiar risk levels. Willpower is a poor long-term power source. It's finite, depletes with use, and fails precisely when you need it most. Under stress, fatigue, or uncertainty, willpower evaporates and set points take over. This is why your best intentions crumble during busy seasons, why your new habits disappear during travel, and why your boldest plans shrink when pressure mounts. Systems beat sprints every time. A well-calibrated set point runs automatically in the background, making good choices feel natural instead of forced. It doesn't require daily pep talks or constant vigilance. It simply makes the right behavior easier than the wrong behavior. The second myth is that results change identity automatically. People think if they just achieve enough, earn enough, or build enough, their self-image will naturally upgrade. But without OS updates, results bounce off. The brain explains away wins that don't match the current set point. That was luck. The market was perfect. I can't sustain this. People self-sabotage wins that don't match their self-image. The entrepreneur who hits 7 figures but still sees himself as small-time will unconsciously make decisions that restore familiar revenue levels. The leader who gets promoted but still identifies as not management material will avoid the authority that comes with the role. Proof without meaning rarely sticks. You can accumulate impressive results, but if they don't update your core identity beliefs, they remain external achievements rather than internal transformations. The set point stays unchanged, quietly working to restore the old normal. The third myth is that big changes require big acts. People think identity transformation demands dramatic gestures, complete overhauls, or life-altering events. But micro-calibrations compound faster and safer than grand gestures. Quiet resets outperform dramatic declarations. The person who announces they're completely changing everything usually crashes within weeks. The person who makes one small adjustment to their daily routine and sticks with it for months creates lasting transformation. Less drama means more durability. Big changes trigger big resistance from the set point. Small changes slip under the radar, avoiding the identity immune system that fights major disruptions. The set point reset protocol. The first step is auditing your current baseline with surgical precision. You need to see the invisible rules governing your life before you can change them. Write down 10 I am statements that feel true about you right now. Not aspirational statements. Not what you wish were true. What actually feels real when you're honest with yourself. For each statement, mark it with an S if it serves your growth or an H if it hurts your progress. I am someone who follows through on commitments. That's an S. I am not good with technology. That's an H. I am naturally organized. S. I am terrible at sales. H. Pay special attention to the H statements. Note the contexts where they show up most powerfully. When do you feel most not good with technology? What triggers the terrible at sales identity? These trigger contexts are where your set point exerts the strongest pullback to baseline. Choose one H belief to retire this month. Not all of them. 1. The goal isn't to become a completely different person overnight. It's to make one precise adjustment that creates momentum for everything else. The second step is choosing your new baseline with clarity and specificity. Draft your minimal viable identity in 12 words or less. This isn't a complete personality description. It's a focused statement that captures the essence of who you're becoming. I am a calm, strategic builder who plans before acting. I am a decisive leader who delegates and trusts. I am a systematic creator who finishes what I start. Define 3 rules that your MVI lives by. These aren't suggestions or guidelines. They're non-negotiable operating principles that guide decisions when you're tired, stressed, or uncertain. Plan before action. Single task deep work. Delegate before doing. Simple, clear, measurable. Pick one daily micro-act that proves the new rules. Something so small you can't fail, so obvious you can't miss, so quick you can't skip. 2 minutes of morning planning for the strategic builder. 1 deep breath before responding for the calm leader. 30 seconds of decision-making for the decisive creator. The third step is anchoring the new set point with environmental cues and protective friction. Place 3 visible reminders in your daily environment. Change your phone lock screen to display your keystone quality. Put a card on your desk with your 3 rules. Set a calendar reminder with your identity statement. Add protective friction to one old habit that reinforces the outdated set point. Move the app that wastes your time off your home screen. Put your phone in another room during focus blocks. Require a written justification before saying yes to requests that don't align with your new identity. Schedule a 2-minute identity check at the same time daily. Not a long reflection session, not a complex review process, just a quick moment to ask, did I act like my MVI today? What's one small adjustment for tomorrow? Advanced calibration techniques. One powerful technique is naming and retiring the old role. Instead of fighting against your outdated identity, acknowledge it with respect and formally transition it out. Call it the firefighter, or the perfectionist, or the lone wolf. Speak about it in past tense. I used to be the firefighter, but now I'm the strategic builder. Thank the old role for its service, then retire it. The firefighter kept you safe when resources were scarce. The perfectionist protected your reputation when credibility was fragile. The lone wolf helped you survive when you couldn't trust others. These identities served a purpose. Honor that, then let them go. Create when-then scripts for common trigger situations. When a surprise request arrives, then I pause and consult the plan. When I feel rushed, then I slow my breath and review priorities. When I'm distracted, then I remove one obstacle in 10 seconds. These scripts give you predetermined responses that align with your new set point instead of your old reflexes. Build a simple visual dashboard to track your 3 rules. Not a complex spreadsheet, not a detailed analytics system, just a weekly green, yellow, red scoring system that takes 30 seconds to update. Green means you followed the rule consistently. Yellow means you followed it sometimes. Red means you mostly ignored it. Review every Friday and adjust only one thing, not 3 things, not everything that went wrong. One small tweak that will make next week better. This prevents the perfectionism crash that kills most identity upgrades. What success looks like. At the good level, you'll keep one identity promise 5 out of 7 days for 2 weeks. You'll report lower decision fatigue because fewer choices require internal negotiation. You'll notice one colleague remark on your increased calm or focus. At the excellent level, you'll default to your new rule during 2 stress spikes. You'll hit 80% weekly plan adherence. You'll reduce reactive tasks by 20% as your set point shifts from responsive to proactive. At the best level, others will describe you with your chosen identity words without prompting. Your keystone quality will hold during travel or crisis. You'll feel off when you deviate from your new baseline, triggering automatic course correction. The most common failure points are vague identity statements that mean different things to different people, over-engineering with too many rules and trackers, and perfectionism crashes where missing one day leads to quitting for a week. Your set point is the foundation everything else builds on. Get this right, and every subsequent chapter becomes easier. Skip this step, and you'll fight friction forever. But even a perfectly calibrated set point needs a targeting system to guide its energy toward meaningful outcomes. The next chapter reveals how to install a servo mechanism that turns every miss into course correction data, every error into improvement fuel. Chapter 3, Aim and Error. A fighter pilot screams through the sky at 500 miles per hour, chasing a target that's also moving at 500 miles per hour. How does the missile know where to go? It doesn't predict where the target will be. It doesn't calculate complex trajectories. Instead, it uses something far more elegant, a servo mechanism that constantly compares where it is to where it should be, then adjusts course based on the error signal. Miss left, adjust right. Miss high, adjust low. Miss by a lot, make a big correction. Miss by a little, make a small correction. The missile doesn't get discouraged by misses. It uses them as navigation data. Your brain has the same targeting system, but most people never learn to use it properly. They set vague goals, ignore error signals, and treat misses as failures instead of course corrections. This chapter will show you how to install a precision targeting system that turns every mistake into momentum and every miss into a map update. The hidden power of precision targeting. Most ambitious builders are flying blind. They have general directions: grow the business, be more strategic, improve leadership, but no precise target image. It's like trying to hit a bullseye in a fog. You might get lucky occasionally, but you'll waste enormous amounts of energy shooting in the wrong direction. Clear identity targets generate useful error signals. When you know exactly what strategic builder looks like in practice, how they start their day, how they respond to interruptions, how they make decisions under pressure, you can immediately tell when you're on target or off course. The gap between your current behavior and your target behavior becomes visible, measurable, and actionable. Ambiguity multiplies mistakes and delays feedback. If your target is be more organized, how do you know when you've hit it? How do you know if you're getting closer or further away? Vague targets create vague feedback, which leads to vague adjustments, which leads to vague results. Precision reduces anxiety because you know what to correct. Instead of feeling generally behind or not good enough, you can see specific gaps and make specific adjustments. I missed my morning planning session 3 times this week is actionable. I'm not strategic enough is paralyzing. The targeting system also makes you anti-fragile. Misses become map updates, not verdicts on your character. Each iteration shrinks variance as you get better at reading error signals and making precise adjustments. Pressure becomes practice, not punishment, because you have a reliable system for course correction. The mythology of failure. The first myth that sabotages most targeting attempts is the belief that failure means stop. People treat misses as evidence they're not cut out for change, not disciplined enough, or not ready for the next level. But in reality, failure means adjust course. Winners mine misses for patterns. They ask, what caused this gap? What was different about the context? What tiny adjustment would close this gap next time? They treat errors as data points in an ongoing experiment, not as judgments on their worth or capability. Losers hide from feedback and repeat errors. They avoid looking at their misses, delete their tracking apps after a few bad days, and start over with the same approach that failed before. They confuse motion with progress and activity with accuracy. The second myth is that targets should be purely numeric. People think if they can't measure it with numbers, it's not a real target. But identity targets are behavior descriptive first, numeric second. I am someone who plans before acting is more powerful than I will spend 30 minutes planning daily because it captures the essence of the identity shift, not just the mechanical action. Numbers support identity clarity. They don't replace it. Once you're clear on the behavioral portrait of your target identity, you can add metrics that help you track progress. But start with the qualitative description, then layer on quantitative measures. Over-quantifying can create blind spots. If you only track what's easily measurable, you might miss the subtle behavioral shifts that matter most. The way you listen in meetings, the tone you use when delegating, the pause you take before reacting. These identity markers are harder to quantify, but often more important than the metrics. The third myth is set and forget. People think once they've defined their target, they can lock it in and never adjust it. But environments change, and targets must evolve. What worked when you were a solopreneur might not work when you're leading a team. What served you in startup mode might not serve you in scale mode. Weekly re-aiming keeps relevance high. Static targets breed stale habits that persist long after they've stopped serving your growth. Regular recalibration ensures your targeting system stays aligned with your current reality and future direction. The aim-act-adjust loop. The foundation of precision targeting is a vivid behavioral portrait of your near-future self. Not a vision board or a list of achievements, but a 100-word snapshot of how you'll act when you're fully embodying your minimal viable identity. Write it in present tense, as if you're observing yourself 6 months from now. I start each day with a clear plan and stick to it. When interruptions arise, I pause, assess their alignment with my priorities, and respond calmly. I delegate tasks that others can do 80% as well as me, and I trust the process. During meetings, I listen more than I speak and ask questions that move us toward decisions. I end each day knowing I focused on what mattered most. Read this target image aloud every morning. Hearing your own voice describe your future self increases salience and makes the target feel more real. Your brain starts looking for opportunities to act in alignment with this description. Update the target monthly as evidence grows. As you accumulate proof of your new identity, the target can become more ambitious or more specific. The person who masters morning planning can target afternoon energy management. The person who delegates well can target strategic thinking time. The next component is distinguishing between lead and lag behaviors. Lead behaviors cause results. Lag behaviors are results. Most people track lag metrics, revenue, followers, team size, and wonder why they can't control them directly. But you can't directly control outcomes. You can only control the behaviors that create outcomes. Choose 3 daily behaviors that cause the results you want. For the strategic builder, it might be morning planning, single tasking during deep work blocks, and end-of-day reflection. For the calm leader, it might be taking 3 deep breaths before responding to requests, asking 1 clarifying question in each conversation, and delegating 1 task daily. Track these lead behaviors with simple green dots. Did you do morning planning today? Green dot. Did you single task during your deep work block? Green dot. Did you delegate something? Green dot. Ignore vanity lag metrics for 30 days and focus only on the behaviors that create results. Review correlations monthly and promote proven leads. If morning planning consistently correlates with better decision-making throughout the day, make it non-negotiable. If single tasking during deep work blocks consistently leads to higher quality output, protect those blocks fiercely. The error signal system. The most powerful component of the targeting system is error capture. After any miss, any time you act inconsistent with your target identity, write 1 sentence describing the gap and 1 tiny fix that would close it. Gap: I checked email during my deep work block. Tiny fix: put phone in another room during focus time. I said yes to a request without checking my priorities. Tiny fix: ask for 24 hours to consider before responding. I took over a task I had delegated. Tiny fix: set a reminder to check progress instead of taking over. Implement the fix within 24 hours. Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for the next planning session. Make the adjustment immediately while the error signal is fresh and the lesson is clear. Log recurring gaps to spot root causes. If you keep checking email during deep work, the root cause might be phone placement, notification settings, or unclear boundaries with your team. If you keep taking back delegated tasks, the root cause might be unclear success criteria, insufficient check-in schedules, or trust issues. The weekly re-aim session is where the targeting system gets refined. Spend 10 minutes every Friday asking 3 questions. What should I keep doing? What should I cut? What should I tweak? Keep behaviors that are working and feeling sustainable. Cut behaviors that aren't moving the needle or are creating unnecessary friction. Tweak one thing that could work better with a small adjustment. Set one constraint for the next week. Constraints create focus and force creative solutions. No context switching before noon. No meetings on Tuesdays. No email after 6 p.m. The constraint should support your lead behaviors and eliminate common sources of error. Choose one bold test for learning speed. Try something slightly outside your comfort zone that could accelerate progress. Delegate a bigger task. Block a longer focus session. Say no to a request you would normally accept. Bold tests generate rapid feedback and prevent the targeting system from becoming too conservative. Advanced targeting techniques. One powerful technique is speaking your target aloud. Hearing your voice describe your future self increases salience and makes the target feel more real. Record a 30-second audio of your target description and play it during your commute. Share your target with one ally for accountability and external perspective. Another technique is single variable testing. Change only one thing per week so you can see clear cause and effect. Keep a simple table of tests and outcomes. Retire approaches that don't work. Scale approaches that do work. Use visual aim points to keep your target visible throughout the day. Place a keyword on your lock screen that represents your keystone quality. Use color-coded dots for daily lead behaviors. Keep tools that support your target identity visible and tools that support old patterns invisible. What precision targeting delivers. At the good level, you'll write and read your 100-word target daily for 2 weeks. You'll track 3 lead behaviors 5 out of 7 days. You'll reduce avoidable errors by 15% as your error capture system starts working. At the excellent level, you'll predict your weekly performance within 20% accuracy. You'll shrink error size by half on a recurring gap. You'll maintain your lead behaviors during 2 peak stress days when your old self would have abandoned the system. At the best level, others will mirror your target language back to you without prompting. You'll break a long-standing plateau via one precise tweak, identified through error analysis. You'll achieve 80% weekly lead adherence for 4 consecutive weeks. The most common failure points are vague targets that can't be observed in practice, shame spirals that make you hide from error signals instead of learning from them, and data overload that creates paralysis instead of clarity. Your targeting system is now locked and loaded. You can see where you're going, track whether you're getting there, and adjust course when you drift off target. But even the most precise targeting system needs fuel to sustain momentum. The next chapter reveals how to transform your relationship with evidence itself, turning every small action into proof that builds unshakable confidence in your new identity. Chapter 4, Belief Math. A scientist walks into her lab with a hypothesis. This compound will reduce inflammation by 30%. She doesn't just repeat the hypothesis louder and louder until she believes it. She doesn't visualize the compound working until it feels true. Instead, she runs experiments, collects data, and updates her confidence based on evidence. If the first test shows a 15% reduction, her confidence drops. If the second test shows 35%, it rises. If 10 tests average 28%, she becomes highly confident in her hypothesis. She treats belief like a probability that updates with new information. Your brain works the same way when you let it. But most people try to change their self-beliefs through repetition and wishful thinking instead of evidence and proof. They wonder why affirmations feel hollow, why confidence feels fake, and why their inner voice keeps arguing with their aspirations. This chapter reveals how to update your self-beliefs the way a rational system would, through evidence, not slogans. You'll learn to close the gap between what you say about yourself and what you can prove about yourself, creating confidence that feels earned instead of manufactured. The silent veto system. Your brain maintains a running probability assessment of every belief you hold about yourself. I am good with people, maybe 75% confidence. I am naturally organized, perhaps 30% confidence. I am a strategic thinker, could be 60% confidence. These percentages aren't conscious, but they're constantly influencing your decisions. Old priors silently veto new behaviors. If your confidence in I am a natural leader sits at 25%, your brain will resist leadership opportunities. It will find reasons to avoid the spotlight, defer to others, or minimize your contributions. The low prior acts like a background program, filtering out evidence that contradicts the existing belief and amplifying evidence that confirms it. Without updates, you'll explain wins away. Land a big client? I got lucky. Deliver a successful presentation? The audience was easy. Lead a team through a crisis? Anyone could have done it. Your brain protects the existing prior by discounting evidence that doesn't fit. With updated priors, courage feels reasonable, not reckless. When your confidence in I am a strategic builder rises from 40% to 70%, strategic decisions stop feeling like dangerous leaps. They feel like natural extensions of who you are. The higher prior makes bold action feel logical instead of terrifying. The gap between affirmations and evidence creates inner conflict. When you tell yourself, I am confident, but can't point to recent proof, your brain registers the disconnect. The affirmation feels hollow because it's not backed by data your internal system trusts. Evidence without reflection stays invisible. You might be accumulating proof daily, but if you don't capture it and review it, your brain doesn't update the prior. The evidence exists, but it's not being processed into belief updates. We need both proof and perception. Action creates evidence. Reflection converts evidence into belief updates. Skip either step, and the system breaks down. The mythology of self-belief. The first myth that sabotages belief updating is the idea that saying something enough makes it true. People repeat affirmations like incantations, hoping repetition will override their internal skeptic, but words help only when backed by behaviors. Overtalking can mask underdoing. The person who constantly talks about being disciplined might be compensating for a lack of disciplined action. The person who frequently mentions being strategic might be avoiding the hard work of strategic thinking. The brain trusts what it sees you do, not what it hears you say. Your internal system is designed to protect you from self-deception. It requires evidence before updating beliefs. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. The skeptical voice isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to ensure your self-assessment matches reality so you don't make dangerous miscalculations. The second myth is that one big win changes everything. People think if they just achieve something impressive enough, their self-belief will permanently shift. But spikes fade while streams stick. Microproof accumulates certainty more reliably than grand gestures. The person who demonstrates strategic thinking in 10 small decisions builds more durable confidence than the person who makes one brilliant strategic move. Consistency beats spectacle because it provides more data points for the belief updating system. Your brain weighs frequency over magnitude when assessing patterns. One exceptional performance might be luck. 10 consistent performances suggest capability. The accumulation of small evidence creates a foundation that can't be explained away. The third myth is that data is cold while identity is emotional. People think evidence-based belief updating is mechanical and soulless, but emotion follows the meaning you assign to data. Evidence can be felt as ease, pride, calm, or satisfaction. When you review a week of strategic decisions, you don't just see data points, you feel the satisfaction of acting in alignment with your values. When you notice yourself staying calm under pressure, you don't just log a behavior, you experience the pride of growth. Stories plus stats persuade your own brain. Combine the narrative. I chose the strategic option when the urgent one was easier with the number, third time this week, and you create compelling evidence that updates both rational and emotional systems. The evidence stacking protocol. The foundation of belief math is defining your current prior with brutal honesty. For your minimal viable identity statement, assign a percentage that represents your current confidence. I am a calm, strategic builder. Maybe you're 40% confident in that statement right now. Note why your confidence isn't higher. List 3 counter stories that keep the percentage low. I lost my temper in last week's meeting. I made that decision too quickly without considering options. I've been reactive instead of proactive lately. These counter stories are the evidence your brain uses to maintain the low prior. Decide what would shift your confidence up by 10% this week. Not 50%, not 100%, just 10%. What specific evidence would move you from 40% to 50% confident? Maybe it's 3 instances of pausing before reacting, 2 examples of choosing strategic over urgent, and 1 case of staying calm during a difficult conversation. The evidence capture system is where belief math becomes practical. Log 3 aligned acts per day with timestamps and 1-line descriptions. 9:15 a.m., paused and took 3 breaths before responding to urgent email. 2:30 p.m., chose to work on quarterly planning instead of checking social media. 4:45 p.m., stayed calm when client changed project scope. Include the felt sense alongside the behavior. How did it feel to pause before reacting? Calm, controlled, powerful? The emotional component helps your brain connect the evidence to identity instead of treating it as isolated incidents. Tag each piece of evidence by quality. Was this an example of discipline, leadership, focus, strategic thinking? The tags help you see patterns and identify which aspects of your identity are accumulating the most proof. The weekly update session is where evidence becomes belief change. Review your total evidence for the week and highlight the top 5 proofs. These are the strongest examples of your new identity in action. Adjust your confidence percentage by 5 to 10% based on the evidence and write a 1-line rationale. Moved from 40% to 48% confident because I demonstrated strategic thinking 3 times and stayed calm during 2 challenging conversations. The written rationale helps your brain accept the update as logical rather than wishful. Choose 1 counter story to challenge next week. If I'm too reactive is keeping your confidence low, focus on collecting evidence of thoughtful responses. If I'm not strategic enough is the limiting story, prioritize examples of strategic decision-making. Closing the affirmation evidence gap. The most powerful technique in belief math is the daily gap closing exercise. For any I am statement you want to strengthen, write down today's proof. If you can't point to specific evidence from today, design a 2-minute act to create proof immediately. Want to strengthen I am disciplined? Point to this morning's planning session or this afternoon's focused work block. Can't point to anything? Do 2 minutes of organizing your workspace right now. The act creates immediate evidence that starts closing the gap. Repeat this daily until the gap disappears. The goal isn't to accumulate massive evidence. It's to ensure that every identity claim you make is backed by recent, specific proof your brain can't dismiss. Advanced evidence techniques. Make your evidence visible throughout the day. Use a phone widget or desk card to track your daily tally. Add a green dot for each piece of proof. End each day with a 2-minute recap of your evidence. Pair your evidence collection with another person. Share your top 3 proofs weekly with a trusted ally. Ask them for 1 outside observation about changes they've noticed. Celebrate micro wins together to keep momentum fun and sustainable. Create narrative snapshots for your strongest evidence. Instead of just logging, stayed calm during meeting, write, I stayed calm when the client criticized our proposal, asked clarifying questions instead of getting defensive, and found a solution that satisfied everyone. Save your 5 best stories each month and review them before high-stakes moments. What evidence stacking delivers? At the good level, your confidence will rise 10 to 20% in 30 days. You'll be able to recite 3 recent proofs on demand. You'll notice fewer self-doubting thoughts because your brain has more positive evidence to reference. At the excellent level, your confidence will hit 70% or higher and hold steady for 2 weeks. You'll act according to your identity during surprise challenges because the belief feels solid. Counter stories will feel outdated and unpersuasive compared to your recent evidence. At the best level, others will mirror your identity language back to you without prompting. Your decisions will speed up and second guessing will drop by 40% or more. The new belief will hold without deliberate pep talks because it's supported by undeniable proof. The most common failure points are invisible wins, where you accumulate evidence but don't capture it, cherry-picking failures, where you remember misses but forget wins, and binary thinking, where you treat identity as all or nothing instead of a probability that updates gradually. Your belief system is now operating on evidence instead of hope. Your confidence is earned through proof instead of manufactured through repetition. Your identity claims are backed by data your skeptical brain can't dismiss. But even the strongest beliefs can be undermined by the stories you tell about your past. The next chapter reveals how to rewrite the narratives that have been keeping you small, transforming your history from a burden into a source of strength. Chapter 5, Story Rewrite. A neuroscientist makes a startling discovery in her lab. Every time a memory is recalled, it becomes temporarily unstable, like a file that's been opened for editing. During this brief window, the memory can be modified, updated, or completely rewritten before it's saved back to long-term storage. The implications are staggering. Your past isn't fixed. Every time you remember something, you have the opportunity to change not just how you feel about it, but what it means about who you are. Most people never realize they're carrying around stories that were written by younger, less experienced versions of themselves. Stories that made sense at the time, but now limit their growth. Stories that keep them loyal to outdated conclusions about their capabilities, worth, and potential. This chapter reveals how to rewrite the narratives that have been keeping you small. You'll learn to separate facts from meanings, extract hidden strengths from past setbacks, and transform your history from a burden into a source of power. The invisible authorship problem. You are not just living your life, you're constantly writing and rewriting the story of your life. Every experience gets processed through a meaning-making machine that asks, what does this say about me? What does this prove about my capabilities? What should I conclude about my future? The problem is that most of these conclusions were written during your most vulnerable moments by the least qualified version of yourself. The 8-year-old who concluded, I'm not smart enough after struggling with math. The teenager who decided, I'm not leadership material after a failed group project. The young professional who determined, I'm not cut out for this after a difficult client interaction. These stories become the invisible operating instructions for your adult life. Unreframed stories keep you loyal to the past, making decisions based on outdated conclusions rather than current capabilities. They create invisible boundaries around what you'll attempt, what you'll accept, and what you'll believe is possible. Changed meanings change decisions, which change outcomes. When you rewrite, I failed at that startup, to I learned invaluable lessons about resilience and market validation, you become more likely to take entrepreneurial risks. When you transform, I'm not good with people into, I'm developing my communication skills through practice, you start seeking social challenges instead of avoiding them. One rewritten headline can unlock years of stalled progress. The executive who reframes her early career setbacks as learning to navigate complex organizations suddenly feels qualified for senior leadership roles. The entrepreneur who reinterprets his failed ventures as market research and skill development approaches new opportunities with confidence instead of fear. The key insight is precision over denial. You're not trying to forget the past or pretend bad things didn't happen. You're keeping the facts while editing the aboutness, what the events mean about your identity and capabilities. Denial backfires because your brain knows you're lying, but reframing mobilizes because you're finding equally true but more empowering interpretations. The same data, different headline, different life trajectory. The mythology of memory management. The first myth that keeps people trapped in limiting stories is the belief that you should forget the past. Well-meaning friends and advisors suggest moving on, letting go, or putting it behind you. But forgetting is neither feasible nor useful. Integration creates resilience, not amnesia. The goal isn't to erase difficult experiences, but to extract their value while neutralizing their limiting power. Your setbacks contain lessons, your failures contain insights, and your struggles contain evidence of strengths you didn't know you had. Facts stay while interpretations evolve. The event happened, the outcome occurred, the consequences were real. But what it means about your identity, capabilities, and future, that's editable. That's where your authorship power lies. The second myth is that positive reframing equals lying. People worry that finding empowering meanings in difficult experiences is just putting lipstick on a pig or engaging in self-deception. But reframing is truth plus context, not fiction. Accuracy and agency can coexist. You can acknowledge that you made mistakes while also recognizing that you learned from them. You can admit that you failed while also noting that you had the courage to try. You can accept that you struggled while also seeing that you persisted. New meanings are earned by action. The reframe isn't just a mental exercise, it's a commitment to act differently based on the new interpretation. When you rewrite, "I'm not a natural leader, as I'm developing leadership skills through practice," you commit to seeking leadership opportunities. The third myth is that only dramatic breakthroughs count. People think story rewriting requires major therapeutic interventions, life-changing revelations, or emotional catharsis. But micro-reframes shift daily behavior more reliably than dramatic insights. Consistency beats catharsis. Small, regular adjustments to how you interpret your experiences compound over time. The person who slightly reframes one limiting story per week creates more lasting change than the person who has one major breakthrough per year. Small hinges move big doors. A minor shift in how you interpret your communication style can change how you show up in meetings. A subtle reframe of your past mistakes can alter your risk tolerance. A small adjustment to your origin story can transform your sense of what's possible. The reframe and bind method. The foundation of story rewriting is selecting the right memory to work with. Choose one sticky memory that's currently fueling a limiting "I am" belief. Not the most traumatic event in your life. Not the biggest failure. Just one specific incident that installed a conclusion that's now limiting your growth. Define the exact sentence this memory installed. "I am not a finisher. I am not good under pressure. I am not leadership material. I am not naturally confident." The more specific the limiting belief, the more precisely you can target the reframe. Pick a safe, time-bounded recall window. You're not trying to relive the entire experience or process all the emotions. You're doing surgical work on the meaning, which requires calm precision, not emotional intensity. The recall phase requires careful management. Breathe slowly and recount the bare facts in one paragraph. What actually happened? What were the observable events? What were the measurable outcomes? Strip away interpretations, judgments, and emotional overlays. Just the facts. Label emotions without judging them. I felt embarrassed. I experienced disappointment. I was angry. Acknowledge the emotional reality without making it mean anything about your identity or capabilities. End the recall deliberately and shift attention to present cues to close the memory window. Look around the room. Notice 5 things you can see. Feel your feet on the floor. This prevents rumination and keeps the process contained. The reframing phase is where the transformation happens. Ask yourself, what else is equally true about this event that serves my minimal viable identity? You're not looking for silver linings or forced positivity. You're looking for alternative interpretations that are just as factually accurate but more empowering. draft a 3-line empowering headline that captures the new meaning. This experience taught me that I persist under pressure. This situation showed me I'm willing to take risks for growth. This event revealed my commitment to learning from feedback. Pair the new headline with one immediate action you can take right now. The action should be congruent with the new interpretation and provide immediate evidence that the reframe is real, not just wishful thinking. The binding phase is what makes the reframe stick. Perform the action within 15 minutes of creating the new headline. If your reframe is, "I learn from feedback," immediately ask someone for input on a current project. If your new story is, "I persist under pressure," tackle a challenging task you've been avoiding. Write a one-sentence because statement, linking the action to the headline. I asked for feedback on my presentation because I am someone who learns from input. I started the difficult conversation because I am someone who persists under pressure. Repeat the headline daily for 7 days, then reassess. The repetition helps encode the new meaning, while the daily practice provides ongoing evidence that supports the reframe. Advanced reframing techniques. One powerful technique is using neutral language first to reduce emotional heat. Instead of, "I failed miserably at that presentation," try, "The presentation didn't achieve the intended outcome." Instead of, "I was terrible at managing that team," try, "The team management approach needed adjustment." Use third-person phrasing for additional distance if needed. The person in that situation was learning to navigate complex dynamics. Someone in that position would naturally need time to develop those skills. Return to first person once the emotional charge decreases. Strength mining is another valuable approach. Extract 3 strengths that the difficult event revealed: persistence, courage, resilience, adaptability, integrity, commitment to growth. Turn each strength into a present tense identity line and stack them into your evidence log. Timebox your memory replays to avoid rumination. Cap recall sessions to 60 or 90 seconds maximum. Set a timer and stop when it rings. Stand up, walk around, or engage in physical movement to reset your state. What story rewriting delivers? At the good level, the emotional sting of one limiting memory will drop a level on a 1 to 10 scale. You'll write a clear, empowering headline that feels true, not forced. You'll take one congruent action the same day you do the reframe. At the excellent level, you'll convert the problematic event into a repeatable strength cue. The new headline will change a weekly decision pattern as you start acting from the empowered interpretation. Anxiety will decrease when you encounter similar triggers because the story no longer threatens your identity. At the best level, you'll actively seek challenges that the old story caused you to avoid. Others will notice your increased calm when discussing your past. The reframed event will become a teaching asset that you can share to help others, rather than a wound you need to hide. The most common failure points are overexposure that leads to emotional flooding, vague headlines that sound inspiring but don't drive behavior change, and missing the binding action that converts insight into evidence. Your past is no longer your prison. The stories that once limited you have been rewritten to serve your growth. The events that once proved your inadequacy now demonstrate your resilience and learning capacity. But even the most empowering stories need to feel true at a cellular level. The next chapter reveals how to transfer the felt sense of absolute certainty from beliefs you know are rock solid to beliefs you're still building. Chapter 6, Certainty Codes. Close your eyes and think about something you're absolutely certain of. Maybe it's, "I love my family," or "I keep my promises," or "I'm good at solving problems." Notice how that certainty feels. Where do you sense it in your body? What does your inner voice sound like when it states this truth? How clear and bright is the mental image? Now think about a quality you're trying to develop. Perhaps, "I am disciplined," or "I am a natural leader." Notice the difference. The voice might sound tentative, the image might be fuzzy or distant, the feeling might be weak or unstable. Here's what most people don't realize. The difference between these two experiences isn't just about evidence or time, it's about structure. Your brain encodes certainty in specific sensory patterns, and you can learn to transfer those patterns from beliefs you know are rock solid to beliefs you're still building. This chapter reveals the hidden architecture of conviction and shows you how to give your new identity the same felt truth as your strongest beliefs. The architecture of absolute conviction. Your brain doesn't just store beliefs as abstract concepts. It encodes them as rich sensory experiences with specific parameters that determine how true they feel. A belief that registers as absolutely certain has a different sensory signature than one that feels uncertain. Under stress, you defer to what feels truest, not what makes the most logical sense. When pressure mounts and time is short, your brain doesn't have the luxury of weighing evidence or considering rational arguments. It defaults to beliefs that carry the strongest felt sense of truth. Certainty turns skills into reflexes. When you're absolutely certain you can handle difficult conversations, you don't hesitate when conflict arises. When you're completely confident in your strategic thinking, you don't second-guess your decisions under pressure. The certainty eliminates the internal negotiation that slows down action. Uncertain beliefs collapse at the first pushback. If your confidence in "I am a leader" feels shaky, the first challenge to your authority will trigger doubt. If your belief in "I am disciplined" feels tentative, the first temptation will reveal the weakness in your conviction. The revolutionary insight is that structure matters more than content. The brain trusts how a belief is encoded, the sensory parameters that surround it, more than the logical arguments that support it. Adjust the structure, and you can change the felt certainty without changing the factual basis. You're not editing your honesty when you work with certainty codes. You're editing the settings that determine how true something feels. It's like adjusting the brightness, contrast, and volume on a video to make it more compelling. The content stays the same, but the impact changes dramatically. The mythology of conviction building. The first myth that keeps people trapped in tentative beliefs is the assumption that certainty takes years to develop. People think they need decades of experience or massive amounts of evidence before a new identity quality can feel truly solid. Time helps, but structure speeds the process. When you understand how your brain encodes certainty, you can accelerate the development of felt truth. Repeatable coding creates durable confidence that doesn't depend on perfect circumstances or unlimited evidence. You can earn felt truth faster through conscious design. Instead of waiting for certainty to emerge naturally over years, you can study the sensory signature of your strongest beliefs and apply that structure to developing qualities. The second myth is that conviction is all about words. People think if they just find the right affirmations or repeat the right phrases, their beliefs will feel more solid. But tone, volume, and imagery matter more than slogans. The body broadcasts certainty through posture, breathing, and micro-expressions. When you truly believe something, your spine straightens, your breathing deepens, and your voice carries conviction. Align your physiology with your belief, and the belief feels more real. Your inner voice has specific characteristics when expressing absolute certainty. It might be deeper, slower, or more resonant than when expressing doubt. The location of the voice in your mental space, whether it seems to come from your chest, your head, or somewhere else, also affects how true it feels. The third myth is that feelings can't be engineered. People think emotions and felt sense are beyond conscious control, that you either feel certain or you don't. But you already engineer feelings constantly. You use music to change your mood, lighting to create atmosphere, and rituals to generate specific states. You can apply the same principles to identity beliefs. The ethics of engineering certainty come down to this. Engineer for truth you intend to live. Don't create false confidence in abilities you have no intention of developing. But if you're committed to becoming more disciplined, strategic, or confident, there's nothing dishonest about giving those developing qualities the felt sense they deserve. The Code Transfer Protocol. The foundation of certainty coding is mapping the sensory signature of a belief you're absolutely certain about. Close your eyes and bring to mind something you know beyond any doubt. It might be your love for your family, your commitment to your values, or your ability in a core skill area. Notice the image that accompanies this belief. How big is it? How bright? How close or far away does it seem? Where is it located in your mental space? Center, left, right, up, down? Is it moving or still? Clear or fuzzy? Colorful or black and white? Pay attention to your inner voice when it states this certain belief. What's the tone? Confident, warm, matter of fact? What's the tempo? Fast, slow, measured? What's the volume? Loud, soft, just right? Where does the voice seem to originate? Your chest, your head, your throat? Notice the physical sensations that accompany absolute certainty. Where do you feel it in your body? Is there warmth, expansion, solidity? How is your posture? How is your breathing? What's the overall felt sense? Grounded, elevated, centered. Now bring to mind the identity quality you want to strengthen. Maybe it's, I am disciplined, or I am a natural leader, or I am strategic. Rate your current certainty in this belief on a scale of 0 to 10. Map the current sensory parameters of this developing belief without judgment. How does the image look different from your certain belief? How does the inner voice sound different? What physical sensations accompany it? Where do you feel doubt or uncertainty in your body? The transfer process is where the transformation happens. Adjust the parameters of your developing belief to match the signature of your certain belief. If your certain belief appears as a bright, close, centered image, adjust your developing belief to have the same visual characteristics. If your certain belief is accompanied by a deep, slow, resonant inner voice, modify the voice that states your developing belief to match those qualities. If your certain belief creates a feeling of warmth and expansion in your chest, cultivate the same physical sensation when you think about your developing quality. Stand tall and slow your breathing to anchor the new state. Physical posture and breathing patterns are powerful anchors for internal states. When you embody the physiology of certainty, the belief feels more solid. Speak the belief aloud with the new sensory coding, then immediately perform a 2-minute action that's congruent with the belief. If you're working on I am disciplined, do something that requires discipline. If you're developing I am strategic, make a strategic decision. The immediate action provides evidence that supports the new felt sense. Advanced coding techniques. The 3-parameter rule prevents over-engineering. Focus on changing only 3 sensory parameters to avoid analysis paralysis. A common effective trio is image distance, inner voice tone, and chest sensation. Make the image closer and brighter, deepen the voice tone, and cultivate a feeling of expansion in your chest. Rehearse the new coding for 60 seconds daily. Like any skill, certainty coding improves with practice. Spend 1 minute each morning bringing up your developing belief with its new sensory signature. Then take one small action that aligns with it. Timing matters for effective recoding. The process works best when you're calm and centered, not when you're stressed or distracted. Don't attempt certainty coding mid-crisis. Instead, do the work during peaceful morning hours or quiet evening windows when your nervous system is regulated. Always pair certainty work with immediate action. Felt sense without behavior decays quickly. The new coding needs to be reinforced with evidence, or it will fade by afternoon. Schedule a 2-minute congruent act immediately after each coding session. Log your actions to let evidence reinforce the coding. When you act in alignment with your developing belief, capture it in your evidence log. The combination of structural coding and behavioral proof creates robust, lasting certainty. What certainty coding delivers? At the good level, your target belief will move from a 3 out of 10 to a 5 or 6 out of 10 in certainty within a week. You'll notice steadier posture and more confident body language when stating the belief. You'll complete one congruent micro-action daily that reinforces the new felt sense. At the excellent level, the belief will hold under mild stress. Instead of collapsing when challenged, it will maintain its structural integrity. You'll proactively choose tasks and opportunities that align with the belief because it feels true enough to act on. Others will perceive you as more grounded and confident in this area. At the best level, the belief will hold under high pressure. When stakes are high and stress is intense, you'll still access the certainty and act from it. You'll make decisions without extensive inner negotiation because the belief feels solid. The quality will become a default descriptor that others use when talking about you. The most common failure points are over-tweaking that leads to analysis paralysis, skipping the immediate action that locks in the coding, and trying to work on too many qualities simultaneously, which dilutes the certainty across the board. The felt truth revolution. Your developing beliefs now carry the same sensory weight as your strongest convictions. When you think, I am strategic, it feels as solid as I keep my promises. When you consider, I am disciplined, it carries the same certainty as I love my family. This isn't self-deception, it's structural alignment. You're giving beliefs that you're committed to developing the felt sense they deserve. You're removing the artificial distinction between old certainties and new possibilities. The coding work creates a foundation of felt truth that can support bold action. When your beliefs feel certain, courage feels reasonable. When your identity feels solid, risk feels manageable. When your capabilities feel real, opportunities feel accessible. But even the most certain beliefs need expression through consistent action. The next chapter reveals how to translate your upgraded identity into daily behaviors that make your transformation visible to yourself and others. Chapter 7. A method actor preparing for a role doesn't just memorize lines and study the script. She watches how her character walks, talks, and breathes. She adopts the character's posture, gestures, and daily routines. She doesn't just think about being the character. She acts as the character until the performance becomes second nature. Your brain works the same way. It watches what you do and draws conclusions about who you are. Every action is a vote for your identity. Every behavior is a signal that teaches your brain what to believe about your capabilities, values, and nature. Most people try to change their identity through thinking, planning, and internal work. But the fastest route to becoming someone new is to start acting as if you already are that person. Not fake it till you make it. Act as if you're becoming it, because you are. This chapter reveals how to design a self-signaling system that makes your behavior teach your brain who you are. You'll learn to build identity-based habits that run automatically, engineer your environment to support your future self, and create proof that's impossible to ignore. The biography your actions write. Every day, you're writing an autobiography with your actions. Not with words, but with choices. Not with intentions, but with behaviors. Your brain reads this behavioral biography and updates its beliefs about who you are based on what it observes you doing consistently. Without action, identity stays theoretical. You can have the clearest vision, the strongest beliefs, and the most compelling stories, but if your behavior doesn't match, your brain won't buy it. The internal skeptic that's been protecting you from self-deception will continue to whisper doubts until your actions provide undeniable proof. Repetition teaches your brain what to believe more powerfully than any affirmation or visualization. When you consistently act in alignment with your minimal viable identity, you're providing a steady stream of evidence that this is who you really are. The brain starts to accept the new identity as fact rather than aspiration. Consistency beats intensity every time. The person who does 5 minutes of strategic planning every morning for 6 months builds stronger identity proof than the person who does an 8-hour strategic planning session once per quarter. The brain trusts patterns more than peaks. You're constantly watching yourself and drawing conclusions. This self-signaling happens below conscious awareness, but it's one of the most powerful forces shaping your self-concept. When you see yourself keeping small promises, you conclude you're reliable. When you observe yourself choosing difficult over easy, you decide you're disciplined. When you watch yourself persist through setbacks, you believe you're resilient. Tiny acts can shift big beliefs because they're harder to explain away than major achievements. Anyone can have one good day or one breakthrough moment. But when you consistently demonstrate a quality through small daily actions, your brain has no choice but to update its assessment of who you are. The key is making proof inevitable. Instead of depending on motivation or willpower to generate identity-supporting actions, you design systems that make the right behavior easier than the wrong behavior. You engineer your environment, schedule, and routines so that acting like your future self becomes the path of least resistance. The mythology of behavioral change. The first myth that sabotages identity-based action is the belief that habits are boring. People think that routine and repetition are the enemies of creativity and spontaneity. They worry that building systems will make their lives mechanical and soulless. But boredom is actually a sign of predictability, which is exactly what you want for identity formation. When a behavior becomes so automatic that it feels boring, it's no longer requiring conscious effort or decision-making. It's become part of who you are, rather than something you have to remember to do. Find meaning in the repetition by connecting each action to your larger identity vision. The morning planning session isn't just task organization, it's evidence that you're a strategic person. The daily delegation isn't just workload management, it's proof that you're a leader who develops others. The consistent follow-through isn't just productivity, it's demonstration that you're someone who keeps commitments. You can rotate flavors while keeping the core behavior constant. If your keystone habit is strategic thinking time, you can vary the format. Sometimes it's planning, sometimes it's reflection, sometimes it's reading industry analysis. The surface changes, but the identity signal remains consistent. The second myth is that meaningful change requires massive action. People think they need to overhaul their entire life, implement dozens of new habits, or make dramatic gestures to prove their transformation. But massive changes are often fragile and unsustainable. Micro changes build anti-fragile identity because they're easier to maintain during stress, travel, or disruption. The person who commits to 2 minutes of morning planning can keep that habit during busy seasons, family emergencies, or business travel. The person who commits to 2 hours might abandon it the first time life gets complicated. Small steps create big compounding effects over time. The identity shift from 2 minutes of daily strategic thinking might seem insignificant, but over a year it accumulates to over 12 hours of evidence that you're a strategic person. That's 12 hours of self-signaling that you're someone who thinks before acting, plans before reacting, and prioritizes before executing. The third myth is that if something is easy, it doesn't count. People think that meaningful change has to be difficult, that growth requires struggle, and that anything that feels effortless must not be valuable. But ease is engineered, not accidental. Make the right actions the path of least resistance by designing your environment, schedule, and systems to support your identity goals. Remove friction from behaviors you want to increase and add friction to behaviors you want to decrease. Pre-stage tools, eliminate obstacles, and create cues that make the desired action obvious and simple. Save your willpower for the edges, not the basics. Use your limited self-control for the challenging decisions and unexpected situations, not for the daily fundamentals that should run automatically. When your identity-supporting behaviors require minimal willpower, they become sustainable even during difficult periods. The self-signaling loop design. The foundation of identity-based action is choosing one keystone habit that powerfully expresses your minimal viable identity. This isn't just any habit, it's a behavior that shouts "new me" in 2 to 5 minutes. It should be something that feels significant to your identity shift while remaining small enough to be sustainable. For the strategic builder, it might be 5 minutes of morning planning. For the calm leader, it could be 3 deep breaths before responding to any request. For the systematic creator, it might be 2 minutes of end-of-day reflection on what worked and what didn't. The habit should feel like a clear expression of who you're becoming. Place the cue for this habit where the action will happen. If your habit is morning planning, put your planner on your pillow so you see it when you wake up. If it's strategic thinking time, set a calendar reminder that appears on your computer screen. If it's delegation practice, put a sticky note on your desk that says, "What can I delegate today?" Define a simple reward that immediately follows the action. This doesn't need to be elaborate. A check mark on a calendar, a brief walk around the office, or a quick note in your evidence log. The reward helps your brain recognize that the behavior was valuable and worth repeating. Design friction intelligently by adding steps to old habits you want to avoid and removing steps from new habits you want to keep. If you want to stop checking social media first thing in the morning, move those apps off your home screen or put your phone in another room overnight. If you want to start with strategic planning, have your planner open to today's page and a pen ready beside it. Pre-stage tools the night before to eliminate morning decision fatigue. Set out everything you need for your keystone habit so that when the moment arrives, you can execute without thinking. The easier you make the right choice, the more likely you are to make it consistently. Use weekly streak scoring rather than daily perfectionism. Score your habit 0 to 7 each week based on how many days you completed it. Celebrate 5 out of 7 as success and aim for 80% consistency long term. This prevents the all-or-nothing thinking that kills most habit attempts. Review every Friday and tweak only one variable. Don't overhaul the entire system when something isn't working. Adjust the timing, change the location, modify the cue, or simplify the action. Small adjustments compound into major improvements over time. Advanced identity engineering. One powerful technique is starting ugly. Doing the habit badly, but doing it consistently. If your habit is morning planning, start with 30 seconds of scribbling priorities on a napkin. If it's strategic thinking, begin with 1 minute of asking, "What's most important today?" Quality follows consistency, so focus on showing up rather than performing perfectly. Avoid all-or-nothing thinking by having a minimum viable version of every habit. Your full morning planning session might be 10 minutes, but your minimum viable version is writing down 3 priorities. Your complete strategic thinking time might be 30 minutes, but your emergency version is asking 1 strategic question. Build reputational gravity through public proof. Share a weekly update with one person about your keystone habit. This doesn't need to be performative or detailed, just factual reporting that creates gentle accountability. Completed my morning planning 5 out of 7 days this week is enough to activate social pressure that supports your identity. Use context stacking by pairing your new habit with an existing routine. Attach your strategic thinking time to your morning coffee. Connect your delegation practice to your weekly team meeting. Link your reflection habit to your end-of-workday shutdown routine. The existing behavior becomes a natural trigger for the new one. Remove competing options from the same context. If you want to do strategic planning during your morning coffee, don't have your phone, newspaper, or other distractions available during that time. Make the identity-supporting behavior the only obvious choice in that context. What identity-based action delivers? At the good level, you'll perform your keystone habit 5 out of 7 days for 2 weeks. You'll notice reduced inner negotiation before taking action because the behavior is becoming automatic. You'll receive at least 1 unsolicited comment from someone who notices your increased consistency or focus. At the excellent level, your habit will fire automatically even on your 2 busiest days of the week. You'll maintain it during minor disruptions like travel or schedule changes. You'll successfully add a second micro-habit without experiencing drop-off in your original behavior. At the best level, your habit will persist during major disruptions like travel, family emergencies, or business crises. You'll feel off if you skip it because your identity alarm system will signal that something is missing. Results will start showing up as natural byproducts, smoother weeks, cleaner decisions, better relationships, without you having to force them. The most common failure points are the all-or-nothing trap, where missing 1 day leads to quitting entirely, hidden blockers that make you consistently forget the habit, and boredom that creates an urge to abandon the routine just when it's becoming automatic. Your actions are now writing a new biography. Every day, you're providing evidence that you're becoming the person you've designed yourself to be. The self-signaling loop is running automatically, teaching your brain to believe in your transformation through undeniable behavioral proof. But even the most consistent actions need the right environment to support them. The next chapter reveals how to architect your surroundings, systems, and structures so that your new identity becomes the default setting rather than a daily choice. Chapter 8, OS Upgrade. A software engineer notices her computer running slowly. Applications crash randomly. Simple tasks take forever. She could keep forcing programs to work, restarting applications when they freeze, and pushing through the frustration. Or she could do what every tech professional knows is inevitable: upgrade the operating system. Your identity works the same way. You can keep forcing yourself to act differently, restarting your motivation when it crashes, and pushing through the resistance. Or you can upgrade the underlying system that's running your life. Most people never realize they're operating on outdated software. They're running Identity OS 1.0, a collection of beliefs, rules, and routines that made sense years ago, but now create friction, crashes, and inefficiency. They wonder why change feels so hard, why good habits don't stick, and why they keep reverting to old patterns under pressure. This chapter reveals how to architect a new identity operating system that runs your best behavior automatically. You'll learn to audit your current programming, liberate yourself from limiting labels, and design an environment where your future self becomes the default setting. The invisible infrastructure problem. Every successful organization runs on documented processes. Research shows that teams with clear, written procedures grow 70% faster and more profitably than those operating on informal agreements and tribal knowledge. Yet most people never document the processes running their personal lives. Unseen rules run your life more powerfully than conscious goals. These rules operate below awareness, making thousands of micro-decisions about what you'll attempt, how you'll respond to challenges, and what you'll accept as normal. I must handle everything myself. I can't trust others to do it right. I need to be busy to be valuable. These invisible operating instructions shape your days more than your vision board or strategic plan. If you don't edit the operating system, it edits your goals. You set ambitious targets, but the OS quietly adjusts them downward to match what feels realistic for someone like you. You plan bold moves, but the system creates friction that makes safer choices feel more appealing. You commit to new behaviors, but the underlying programming pulls you back to familiar patterns. Systems make success repeatable by removing dependence on motivation, willpower, and perfect conditions. When your identity upgrade is embedded in your environment, schedule, and routines, it runs automatically even during stress, travel, or crisis. Teams and families feel the stability when you're operating from a clear, consistent system rather than reactive improvisation. Default beats discipline every time. When your environment is designed to support your new identity, good choices become easier than bad choices. When your dashboard makes drift visible before it becomes destructive, course corrections happen naturally. When your rituals remove decision fatigue from daily fundamentals, you can save your mental energy for the decisions that matter most. Environments do the heavy lifting so you don't have to. The strategic builder who keeps planning tools visible and distractions hidden doesn't need willpower to choose planning over scrolling. The calm leader who has breathing cues placed throughout their workspace doesn't need to remember to pause before reacting. The systematic creator who has reflection prompts built into their shutdown routine doesn't need discipline to review their progress. The mythology of systems thinking. The first myth that keeps people trapped in inefficient identity patterns is the belief that systems kill creativity. People worry that structure, processes, and routines will make their lives mechanical and soulless. They think spontaneity requires chaos and innovation demands complete freedom. But structure creates freedom by handling the basics automatically so you can focus on what matters most. The musician who practices scales religiously gains the technical foundation to improvise brilliantly. The The writer, who follows a consistent morning routine, frees their creative energy for the actual writing. The entrepreneur, who systematizes operations, creates space for strategic thinking. Constraints increase quality by forcing creative solutions within defined parameters. The architect, working within building codes, creates more innovative designs than one with unlimited freedom. The filmmaker, working within budget constraints, often produces more compelling stories than those with unlimited resources. The leader, operating within clear values, makes better decisions than one with no guiding principles. Chaos is costly in ways that aren't immediately visible. The person operating without systems spends enormous mental energy on decisions that could be automated. They waste time recreating solutions to recurring problems. They experience stress from uncertainty about what to do next. The hidden cost of chaos compounds daily. The second myth is that labels are harmless. People think the words they use to describe themselves are just casual descriptions with no real impact on behavior. But labels shape choices by creating invisible boundaries around what feels possible or appropriate. Bad labels shrink your option space by making certain actions feel inconsistent with who you are. "I'm not a morning person" eliminates early productivity options. "I'm not good with technology" prevents you from leveraging digital tools. "I'm not a natural leader" keeps you from stepping into authority when situations demand it. Liberate language, liberate action. When you replace limiting labels with process-based descriptions, you open up new possibilities. "I'm not organized" becomes "I'm developing organizational systems." "I'm not good with people" transforms into "I'm practicing communication skills." "I'm not disciplined" shifts to "I'm building consistency habits." The third myth is that dashboards are micromanagement. People think tracking and measurement are signs of distrust or obsessive control, but dashboards reveal patterns, not people to blame. They help you manage trends rather than moments, seeing the forest instead of getting lost in individual trees. Simple beats ornate when it comes to tracking systems. The most effective dashboards focus on 3 key metrics that capture the essence of your identity shift. Complex tracking systems create analysis paralysis and maintenance overhead that kills consistency. The OS architecture protocol. The foundation of your identity upgrade is a comprehensive audit of your current operating system. List your top 10 identity rules, the I am statements that currently govern your behavior. For each rule, mark it as K for keep, RW for rewire, or RT for retire. Keep rules that serve your growth and align with your minimal viable identity. I am someone who keeps commitments, supports any identity upgrade. I am naturally curious, enables continuous learning. I am resilient under pressure, helps you navigate challenges. Rewire rules that have useful cores but limiting expressions. I am a perfectionist might become I am someone who maintains high standards while shipping consistently. I am independent could transform into I am self-reliant and strategically collaborative. Retire rules that actively sabotage your growth. I am not a leader needs to go completely. I am terrible with technology must be eliminated. I am not disciplined requires full retirement. For each rule you're rewiring or retiring, note the context and triggers that activate it most strongly. When do you feel most not a leader? What situations trigger I'm not disciplined? Understanding the activation patterns helps you design specific interventions. Choose 3 rules to work on this quarter, not 10, not all of them. 3. Focus creates momentum, while scattered effort creates frustration. Label liberation is the next phase of the upgrade. Identify 3 constricting labels you use regularly, then replace each with a process-based alternative. I'm disorganized becomes I run a weekly planning ritual. I'm not a salesperson transforms into I'm developing persuasion skills. I'm not tech-savvy shifts to I'm learning digital tools systematically. Practice saying the new labels aloud daily. Language patterns are deeply ingrained, so conscious repetition is required to install new defaults. Catch yourself using old labels and immediately correct with the process-based version. The sunset ritual is where you formally retire identities that no longer serve you. Write a brief thank you letter to the old role, acknowledging how it served you in the past, while explaining why it's time to move on. Thank you, perfectionist, for protecting my reputation when I was building credibility. I'm ready to ship consistently now while maintaining quality. Mark the transition with a symbolic act. Archive the folder of old business cards. Move the tool that represents the old identity to storage. Delete the app that reinforced outdated patterns. Physical actions make psychological transitions feel real. Share your identity shift with one trusted person. Public acknowledgement creates accountability and makes the change feel official. I'm transitioning from being the firefighter to being the strategic builder, gives others permission to hold you to the new standard. Advanced OS design. Create a one-page operating system document that captures your entire identity architecture. Include your minimal viable identity statement, your 3 core rules, your keystone habits, and your key metrics. Keep it simple enough to review in 5 minutes, but comprehensive enough to guide decisions. Update this document weekly during a brief review session. Use the same time and place to create ritual consistency. Ask 3 questions. What should I keep doing? What should I cut? What should I tweak? End each review with one public micro-commitment that reinforces your new identity. Design your physical environment to support your upgraded identity. Place artifacts that remind you of your new self in visible locations. Remove objects that anchor you to outdated patterns. If you're becoming a strategic builder, display planning tools prominently and hide reactive triggers. If you're developing calm leadership, place breathing reminders where you'll see them during stressful moments. Curate your digital environment with the same intentionality. Change your phone wallpaper to reflect your keystone quality. Adjust your calendar labels to reinforce your new identity. Modify your email signature to include a subtle reminder of who you're becoming. Build simple dashboards that track 3 identity key performance indicators: promises kept, planning sessions completed, evidence entries logged. Weekly green, yellow, red scoring keeps you aware of trends without creating obsessive tracking overhead. Schedule quarterly OS days where you step back and evaluate the entire system. What's working? What needs adjustment? What new challenges require system updates? Treat your identity operating system like software that needs regular maintenance and periodic upgrades. What OS upgrade delivers? At the good level, you'll create and use a one-page operating system document for 4 weeks. 3 process-based labels will replace old self-judgments in your daily language. You'll complete your first sunset ritual, formally retiring an identity that no longer serves you. At the excellent level, your identity key performance indicators will trend green for a full month. Your environment will support your new habits without requiring conscious effort. Peers will start mirroring your new identity language back to you, confirming that the external shift is matching your internal transformation. At the best level, your new identity will run on default even under high stress. You'll be able to onboard others into your operating system with ease, helping family members and team members adopt similar clarity. Your culture will reflect the calm, consistency, and clarity of your upgraded identity architecture. The most common failure points are overbuilding complex systems that nobody maintains, label relapse where old descriptions slip back into daily speech, and ritual avoidance where you delay the emotional work of formally retiring outdated identities. Your identity operating system is now running the latest version. Your environment supports your best behavior automatically. Your language reinforces your growth rather than limiting it. Your systems handle the fundamentals so you can focus on what matters most. But even the most elegant operating system needs integration and momentum to reach its full potential. The final chapter reveals how to lock in your transformation, leverage your new identity for greater impact, and design the next phase of your evolution. Chapter 9. Own the shift. You've built something remarkable. Not just a new set of habits or a collection of techniques, but an entirely new operating system for your identity. You've learned to reset your internal thermostat, install precision targeting, update beliefs through evidence, rewrite limiting stories, transfer certainty codes, design identity-based actions, and architect an environment that supports your best self. But here's what separates the people who transform their lives from those who just read about transformation: ownership. The willingness to claim your new identity fully, leverage it for greater impact, and design the next phase of your evolution. This final chapter is where everything crystallizes, where the method becomes mastery, where the shift becomes permanent. You'll synthesize the entire journey, understand how your transformation ripples outward to benefit others, and walk away with absolute clarity about your next move. The architecture you've built. The identity transformation process you've completed follows a precise sequence that mirrors how lasting change actually happens in the real world. You started by resetting your set point, recalibrating the internal thermostat that was keeping you locked in familiar patterns. Then you installed an aim and error targeting system that turns every miss into course correction data. You updated your beliefs through evidence rather than affirmations, creating confidence that feels earned instead of manufactured. You rewrote the stories that were keeping you small, extracting strength from setbacks and transforming your history from burden to asset. You transferred the felt sense of certainty from rock-solid beliefs to developing qualities, giving your new identity the same conviction as your strongest truths. You designed identity-based actions that make your behavior teach your brain who you are, creating a self-signaling loop that compounds over time. Finally, you architected an operating system that runs your best behavior automatically, removing dependence on willpower and making your transformation the path of least resistance. This isn't just personal development, it's identity engineering. You've learned to treat your sense of self as a system that can be designed, debugged, and upgraded rather than a fixed destiny you have to accept. Strategy drives everything in this approach. Identity drives behavior. Behavior drives results. Systems sustain behavior. Environments remove friction. Public proof locks identity in place. You've learned to work upstream, changing the source code rather than fighting the symptoms. The flywheel is now spinning. Win creates evidence. Evidence builds belief. Belief enables bigger wins. Doubt shrinks as proof stacks. Momentum compounds because each success makes the next one more likely and less effortful. The power you now possess. You now have agency on demand. You can choose who you are on purpose with a proven method to back it up. This isn't positive thinking or wishful visualization. It's systematic identity architecture based on how your brain actually works. Courage feels rational rather than reckless because you have a reliable process for becoming the person who can handle whatever you're facing. You've developed calm under pressure because your operating system handles stress without drama. Clear targets reduce noise by giving you obvious priorities when chaos strikes. Certainty codes stabilize execution by making your core qualities feel unshakable even when circumstances are uncertain. Your confidence is now durable because it's built on proof rather than pep talks. This is confidence you can teach to others and scale through teams. It's confidence that survives surprises because it's rooted in systems rather than circumstances. But perhaps most importantly, you've learned that identity is a choice, not a sentence. You're not stuck with the conclusions drawn by younger, less experienced versions of yourself. You're not trapped by past mistakes or limited by current circumstances. You have the tools to become whoever you need to be to create the life and impact you want. The ripple effect on your relationships. Your identity transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It radiates outward to improve every relationship in your life. Consistency builds trust because you make fewer promises but keep more of them. Your predictability reduces anxiety for others because they know what to expect from you. People rely on you because you've learned to rely on yourself. You develop cleaner boundaries because your identity clarifies what deserves a yes and what requires a no. You stop rescuing others from problems they need to solve themselves. And you start leading by example. Respect rises on both sides because you're operating from clarity rather than confusion. Your new language creates shared understanding. Process labels replace blame in difficult conversations. Dashboards make expectations explicit rather than assumed. Culture aligns around values that are lived rather than just preached. Your family notices the change first. Your partner sees you making decisions from calm rather than reactivity. Your children observe you keeping commitments to yourself, which teaches them that self-respect is possible. Your parents witness you taking ownership of your growth rather than blaming circumstances. Your team feels the stability of working with someone who has clear operating principles. Your clients experience the confidence of partnering with someone who knows who they are and what they stand for. Your peers respect the consistency of someone who shows up the same way regardless of external pressures. What you can now achieve. Strategic leaps that once felt impossible now feel manageable because you can make bolder moves without self-sabotage. Your upgraded identity supports bigger risks because you trust your ability to handle whatever outcomes emerge. You can hold focus through uncertainty because your targeting system keeps you oriented toward what matters most. You close execution gaps quickly because your error capture system turns mistakes into immediate course corrections. You've developed repeatable excellence by learning to turn wins into playbooks. You can scale your identity through teams and processes, helping others adopt the same clarity and consistency. You sustain performance across seasons because your systems work regardless of mood, motivation, or external circumstances. Your freedom expands in ways that compound over time. You have more time for vision work because your operating system handles the fundamentals automatically. Energy that once went to firefighting now flows toward building. Autonomy increases because you're operating from internal clarity rather than external validation. The businesses you build become more valuable because they're not dependent on your constant presence. The teams you lead become more capable because they're operating from clear principles rather than personality-driven decisions. The relationships you cultivate become more meaningful because they're based on authentic identity rather than performed roles. The compound returns of mastery. As you continue practicing these principles, effort decreases while results improve. Your habits run without internal negotiations because they've become automatic expressions of who you are. Your environment enforces alignment so you don't have to rely on willpower. You experience less friction and more flow because your identity and actions are perfectly aligned. Learning curves flatten as your error signals become cleaner and adjustments become obvious. Improvements become routine rather than dramatic because you're constantly making small optimizations. You develop what athletes call unconscious competence, the ability to perform at a high level without conscious effort. Your identity starts paying dividends. Confidence accrues interest as each success builds on previous wins. Reputation multiplies opportunity because people seek out those who consistently deliver. You win bigger with less effort because your systems are doing the heavy lifting. The person you become through this process is someone who can handle whatever life presents. Not because you're invulnerable, but because you have a reliable method for becoming whoever you need to be. You've learned to treat challenges as identity development opportunities rather than threats to your self-concept. Your next move. The first thing to do is schedule your set point reset for today. Block 20 minutes right now. Write your minimal viable identity sentence in 12 words or less. Choose one micro-action that proves this identity and do it immediately. Don't wait for perfect conditions or complete clarity. Start with what you know and adjust as you learn. Begin your evidence log tonight. Record 3 pieces of proof before you sleep, 3 actions you took today that align with your new identity. Speak one identity line aloud to make it feel real. Place a visible cue somewhere you'll see it first thing tomorrow morning. Share a commitment with one person within the next 24 hours. Tell them your next step and ask them to mirror your language back to you. Schedule a check-in for 7 days from now. This creates gentle accountability and makes your transformation feel official. The key is starting small, but starting certain. Don't try to become a completely different person overnight. Choose one quality to embody this month and prove it through daily micro-actions. Let evidence accumulate until the new identity feels as real as your current one. The promise you're one step away from. You're not 10 promises away from transformation. You're one promise away. One commitment kept to yourself today. One small action that proves you're becoming who you say you're becoming. One piece of evidence that your future self can point to and say, that's when everything changed. Start ugly if you have to. Start honest. Start now. Evidence beats doubt every time, and your future self is watching to see how you move when no one else is paying attention. The door to your new identity is open. You have the map, the method, and the momentum. You understand how change really works, and you have the tools to make it stick. You know that identity is upstream from everything else, and you've learned to work at the source rather than fighting symptoms. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for more time, more energy, or more certainty. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Your old identity got you this far, but it can't take you where you're going. Your new identity is waiting for you to claim it fully, own it completely, and leverage it for the impact you're meant to create. The shift is yours to own. The future is yours to design. The person you're becoming is yours to be. Step through the door. Own the shift. Start today. Your transformation begins with the next choice you make.